Alrighty. Hello, everybody. My name is Dane Erasmus, and I will be speaking with you today about Varney Wines and the international strategic plan that we have prepared to propose the next step for the Varney business. So firstly, we'll start with who is Varney Wines. They're an award-winning Australian-owned winemaker based in South Australia. And it's true what they say, it all started as a ton of fun. When established in 2019, Varney Wines was an immediate award winner and established very good supply lines with vintage cellars and had very high sales, which led it to a bit of a crossroads now that the Australian market has decreased slightly. Where is Varney Wines going to go from here? Will it increase its domestic sales or go international? The purpose of this report is to analyse the international aspect and recommend a future market for Varney Wines. Firstly, we'll start with the scope. So the firm itself, Varney Wines, is well equipped with its owner-manager, Alan Varney, who has extensive international and domestic experience. It's clear that the products and methodology used by Varney Wines are suited to the international market. So we'll go on to the next section of the scope of this. The Australian wine industry. Now, this is a very important element. The Australian wine industry has been very good to Varney in the last few years. However, there are many risks in betting the entire future of the company in the domestic industry. Consumer demand growth is decreasing and industry competition is increasing. The market in the domestic industry is very difficult for return on investment because of the high competition climate. Also, the current COVID-19 situation has caused significant disruption to the industry, which has exacerbated these elements. The third aspect of our scope is the South Korean wine industry. Now, the South Korean wine industry hosts one of the most diverse and attractive markets in the world. The Korean market has a diverse consumer range and demand is growing for Australian products. The demand is forecast to grow up 48% by 2023, and the market is also relatively new to Australian growers. Only 136 companies currently export to South Korea from Australia. Also benefiting the South Korean case is the Australian-South Korean trade agreement called CAFTA, which cut tariffs on wine imports into Korea from 14% down to 0%. This decrease strengthened the already very strong supply relationship between the two countries. So as part of this report, the macroeconomic analysis and the macro analysis of the industry has reported the following results. So firstly, South Korea is an emerging economy showing really stable growth over the last 5 years. Much of this growth is due to the increase and the boom of the manufacturing industry, which has caused steadily increasing trend in household income and wages, which increases discretionary income spent on the product. The Korean wine industry is valued at $2,610 million US and is expected to continue to grow 12.8% on its trajectory as alcohol consumption increases within the country. The supermarket sector is dominated the supermarket sector is one of the main distribution channels. 53.3% it says there, and it's dominated by mass producers locally and internationally. The second largest is the on-trade, bars, cafes and restaurants, and they have about moderate competition. The demand has changed a lot recently to move towards more niche, small batches and high quality wines. And this we see as well with the specialist food and drink providers. A report published by Wine Intelligence Australia actually named South Korea as the second most attractive wine market in the world in 2020 due to its high growth rate and the performance of the industry through the COVID-19 pandemic. Many experts believe that the country's experience of pandemics, such as SARS, has given an advantage when economically recovering from the decreased productivity. So in the short term, South Korea also is a very promising aspect to it. The microanalysis also had a few interesting outcomes. And the first was that Varney Wines is part of a very interesting phenomenon called a cluster of companies. Now, this is actually a major advantage for Varney Wines. Essentially, this means that companies in the area are in a pressurized situation where there's more competition. So they're forced to become more innovative and efficient because of this. But also they have an increased opportunity due to the relationships with suppliers and customers within the area. This is a very crucial advantage, as I mentioned, as it's major in assisting to increase the production to meet a new market venture. The greatest strengths of the firm are its high-quality products, established supply line and distribution lines, and ability to satisfy consumer trends, which are environmentally conscious, small batch, high-quality wines. Let me just go to the next slide. So, there we go. High-quality wines. In an export situation, the firm has significant opportunities in export growth and poor harvest due to poor harvest in competing countries. The firm's strengths and weaknesses are based on this report, which is that the current situation in the Australian market is very weak, and also that the firm will need to increase its capacity. A competition analysis discovered that by exporting to the on-trade section of the market, Barney Wines is able to protect itself from the greatest risk of the competitive forces of the industry. Now, how does Barney look in Korea? Well, these are the key advantages and recommendations. Ranked 7th in South Korea as a country of origin is Australia, and this is a massive advantage as consumers have a positive preconceived idea of Australian wine. Wine Intelligence also states that Korean tastes are very suited to Australian grapes and wine, which means our product is very translatable into the foreign market. The macro and micro analysis has allowed the identification of the following competitive advantages for Barney Wines: with superior taste and quality, bold innovation and design, adaptable to consumer trends, and integrated and robust supply chain. So the recommended entry method for Barney Wines is the I model of market entry. So this is an innovation model, which varies slightly depending on the import or the export and the way it performs within the country. So it's very flexible. It's also based heavily in the export development of SMEs, which is exactly what Barney Wines is. Model is better suited than the upseller model as it allows more flexibility for the firm where the home market is not as strong as it once was. And it's also tailored towards firms which are at a time of higher capital investment, which allows them to completely innovate their business model, which is what we will be doing with the innovation model. It also is more suited than the Born Global, as the feasibility of international distribution within online retailing is quite low. So finally, the operating recommendations made for Barney Wines based on the price, product, place, and promotion of the product. So firstly, the price, average retail price of the wines are about $9.50 when translated to Australian dollars. So we're going to retail them around 30 to 40. We want them to be accessible to our customers, but we also want them to be seen as luxury and high quality in the on-trade. The place, it's recommended that Barney Wines employ an overseas distributor to distribute to the local on-trade market. The product, Australian products suit the market taste. As we've had, there will be some labelling changes, and this is generally in the industry done by the distributor. Finally, the promotion. The promotion is due to the bold brand that Barney Wines is. This is a very common trend in the Korean wine industry. The sales incentives for the on-trade retailers to sell Barney Wines, talk it up, really based on that interpersonal connection with our consumers. And finally, wine festivals are really fun and fantastic thing that's very common in South Korea. So having an appearance there, sending the owners themselves anything you need to do to access that. So thanks so much for listening today. We have discussed Barney Wines and their export strategy. We've talked about the Australian market and how it's decreasing in value to more Barney Wines and where Barney Wines can go in the future. As recommended, that was South Korea, to go there to export the products, establish a product line there, and follow that up with the innovation export model. So thanks again for listening.